How are you all doing this morning?
I love you, Nathaniel.
I love you too.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nathaniel Forman. This is my dad. I have been going to this church for 25 years, and it's a sad day to say that my wife and I will be moving to Columbus, Ohio, actually later this afternoon. So I count myself privileged to be here to share with you some of the knowledge and some of the experiences that I've had over the years on this, my last Sunday. We plan on being back, but that'll probably be in about 6 years or so. So for those of you who don't know, I'm going up to the Ohio State University to complete my pediatric training, my residency training up there. So let's start off with some prayer. God, I just ask that you would be here in our midst today. No, we recognize your presence here in our midst today. And I just ask that you would speak to every single one of our hearts, that we would be transformed, that we would learn your truth, that we would be set free by your truth, and that we would walk in newness of life because of it. I just ask that you would clear our minds of all the things that are worrying us, clear our minds of all the things that we're thinking about, and just bring us close to you, that we would know you and understand more about you and grow closer to you in this next day. Just speak through me, Lord. Prevent any untruth or any falsehood from escaping my mouth. I only want to speak what you have. In your name I pray, amen.
Amen.
So just a quick disclosure, I am not a PhD scientist. I am not a pastor. I'm a medical doctor. So my scope of expertise is mainly the human body. But I have had quite a few years of studying sciences to learn more about this. And so I thought it would be fun, but also really good and challenging to bring up a lot of these issues that I think are very relevant in today's culture. I've noticed that a lot of people throw up barriers. They throw up barriers. They're like, you know, if you're religious, you know, scientists say if you're religious, there's no way you can actually believe in science because you're actually depending on your faith. And then you have religious people who are saying, forget science, the Bible is only and all true, and we don't need to even care about what scientists say. It creates a divide. So my question is, what is science? Let's go back to, and this is hopefully interactive. So if you have an idea of what science is, go ahead and shout it out for me.
Observation.
Observation, okay. More than observation.
Proving what God is.
Hypothesis.
Hypothesis, what?
Hypothesis for proving and testing.
Testing a hypothesis and proving it, okay. Okay, good. So I looked up the definition of science, which is the intellectual practice and activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experimentation. So those two things are important. Observation and experimentation. Or as I like to say, really science, that's just a fancy way of saying it's a search for truth. And we found that experimentation and observation are a way to prove truth. And that's basically what science is. So, but what's the Bible? I have a question. How is it that there has become this dichotomy? Because really, if we're Christians and we believe that the Bible is the Word of God, we believe the Bible is truth. And in essence, the Bible should be our truth handbook. And so if we have this truth handbook, how have we allowed this dichotomy to show up? You know, many times in history, the prevailing thoughts or the prevailing scientific minds or even the prevailing religious minds held beliefs that were actually false, that the Bible said was true. One of those is the theory of the flat earth. I don't know why it's not working. But there was a theory for years, even up until like just before Jesus, the prevailing thought was that the earth was flat. And even up until the days of Christopher Columbus, people were worried as he was going to sail across the ocean. You remember in 1492? That he was going to sail off the edge of the planet And now we look back at that and we say, wow, that's ridiculous. But in the Bible, in Isaiah, that was on the last slide, sorry. In Isaiah 40, verse 22, it says, It's he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretch out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to dwell in. The Bible talks about a circular, spherical earth before science or the prevailing thought. It's fine, don't mess with it. The prevailing thoughts thought differently. And so I would really like to, in this time, bring you to the realization, bring you a closer understanding how true the Bible is, and that we can trust the Bible even if it doesn't make sense. And even when prevailing thoughts and prevailing scientific minds seem to think otherwise, I think that if you look at the Bible and if it's understood properly, if it's interpreted properly in its context, I believe that every single time you'll find that the Bible is true.
Hallelujah.
There's an old saying, all truth is God's truth. It's because who created this world we lived in? Who set this foundation for everything? It wasn't minds. It was God and the foundation of the earth. And we're going to get into that. So many people say that science is proving the Bible wrong just in evolution, and that's a big part. So my talk today really isn't on disproving evolution. That's not my goal. I'm going to talk about a couple different points about evolution and maybe poke a little bit of holes. But I'm not planning on discrediting evolution completely, so if you're hoping for that, that's not what it is. So there's a big debate, creation versus evolution. But one of my biggest issues with the theory of evolution is that it basically goes against what science is, which is what? Observation and experimentation.
Yes.
But you can't observe what's happened billions of years ago, if not hundreds of years ago. So, therefore, in order, as scientists have gone about the process of proving evolution, they've taken snippets now, they've done an experiment now, and hypothesized that it's the same as it would be billions of years ago. But we don't know that. And so therefore they've gone about this process of trying to prove something that they can't prove, and then saying they've scientifically proven it via observation, but it doesn't work. So, as I have studied the Bible, and as I've studied science, I was a biology major in high school, in college, and then I just recently finished my medical studies. I've studied a lot about human bodies, because that's my area of expertise. And as I look at the complexities, it takes, 4 years of undergraduate studies to just earn a biology degree, and that's just a basic bachelor's, and then another 4 years of medical studies of long hours and late nights. I learned the complexities of the human body is insanely complex, and the processes that go on, and the systems that have to work in conjunction, and the balance, the specific balance that your body has to be in to work properly is unbelievable. And I believe that really it would be impossible, it really would be impossible for something this complex to come up by its own coming. It just, logically, it doesn't hold up. Don't believe me? What I'd like to do is I'd like to take you through Biology 101. Hopefully you guys, some of you high school is now, some of you high school biology was 50 years ago. But hopefully, I'm hoping to simplify this a little bit, to bring this to a place where we can all understand what's going on, and just point at some of the crazy complexities that we just take for granted in everyday life. So we're going to start at the beginning, Biology 101. Actually, we're going to start even before that. We're going to start at atoms. Now, I'm not a chemist nor a physicist, so I'm going to breeze through this a little bit quickly. So the atoms are the building blocks of life, right? So carbon really is the essential element. It's the one element that is basically needed in order for life to exist as we know it. And so a carbon atom has 6 protons inside of its center, and then 6 neutrons in its center, and then it also has 6 electrons orbiting it. And it's these orbiting electrons that allows it to build something called bonds. And it's different bonds, and I'm not going to get into what types of bonds, but it's different bonds that allow these elements to bind together to form molecules. And molecules are the functional aspect of chemistry. So, the building block of life. Does anybody know what DNA is? Go ahead. It's that. There we go. DNA is what? It's the information code of our system. It's the alphabet that our body uses to create who we are. It's the language. There you go. Thank you very much. So, but do you know what DNA is? DNA is a molecule. Here it is. This is a complex molecule. But you'll see a lot of carbons in there. There's also a lot of hydrogens, a lot of oxygens, and a couple nitrogens as well. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen are the four main elements that make up everything. You'd be amazed at the complexity of that, and how if you just had these, you would have like 98% of who your body is. So your body, so DNA. So what is it? So there's four types of DNA. Well, there's four letters basically, is how I like to say it. So there's a T, an A, C, and a G. Thymine, adenine, cytosine, and guanine. And these four letters, as I like to say, set up your whole genome and set everything up. And what they do is they form these bonds. I was talking earlier about these bonds. So T and A bind together to form these bonds, and C and G form together to bind these bonds. And they form a long chain known as the double helix. And you guys are all familiar with this. You've seen this, I'm sure, in Jurassic Park and all those other ones. But this is what it looks like actually taken together. These are actually the T's, the A's, the G's, and this is the genetic code going up and down. So the process of turning DNA into functional material is pretty complex, and it really takes a cellular biology class, a whole semester to teach it. So I'm not going to get into that now. But suffice to say that it's amazing that with just four letters repeated a bajillion times along these double helices, that we're able to write every single thing about you. We're able to code the differences, the fact that my dad has brown hair and somebody else has blonde hair, and Drew has a beard and I can't grow a beard, and Kwam has great muscles, and every single it encodes the variability in us, but it also encodes the fact that we all in here, we have eyes. We all in here have a face and arms and legs, and so there's parts of the human genome that's the same in every single person, and then there's parts that's variable. The parts that's variable is a very small percent of our human genome. So, but what our body does is, in a complex array, and it's actually really awesome, and I tried to find a couple YouTube videos, but they're all like 20 minutes long. So if you have some free time, go and watch the process of converting DNA into actual function. Maybe you're not into that. I had a blast watching it. But the process is the body takes the DNA, which is raveled really tightly inside the nucleus. It unravels it, takes it out, copies it, takes that copy outside the nucleus, it takes that genetic code and makes a protein in a process called translation. Then it takes that protein and it modifies that. And I want to talk about something specific called I guess I got ahead of myself there. So I want to talk about, first, before I get to what happens, I want to talk about something called the simple cell. Which, if you have studied any form of anatomy, physiology, or even just basic biology, you'll understand that this is a simple cell because they wanted to put a million things inside of there, but you'll never find a cell in the human body that actually looks like this. Because there's so many different variations, and some have more of certain things because they need more, and some have different skeletal muscle, like the nucleus is pushed off to the side and it's basically all of these green things. That's all the skeletal muscle is, it's all green things. So let me just talk a little bit about the different aspects. I even had to blank out some of the extra things that I was like, those aren't important to get the concept across. But this here is the concept of the basic eukaryotic cell. Or the basic simple cell. And so we'll talk about different things. But here in the middle, you'll find the nucleus. This is the storehouse. I like to call the nucleus the library that stores the blueprints. And did you know that every single cell in your body stores the blueprints for every other cell in your body? So every single gene, meaning the gene to turn your hair brown, the gene to make your skin light or dark, the gene to give your toenails longer or shorter, the gene to make your hands wider or thicker or thinner, all of those are encoded, and all that information is encoded in every other cell. So in your skin cell, in your heart cell, all those cells have that DNA. And it's amazing that the specific cell is able to decide what information to show so that it shows up as a skin cell, so it shows up as an eye cell, so it shows up as a nerve. But this nucleus, that's what stores the information. And so, like I said, so the DNA is taken from there, it's copied, and it's taken outside the cell, and it's edited by these right here. They're called ribosomes. They take the messenger RNA, the information that's from the nucleus, and they convert it into a functional item called a protein. Now some people think, oh, protein, that's the thing you want to take, drink a lot of excess protein if you want to be a bodybuilder. But really what protein is a functional aspect, or an item inside your cells that allows you to do things. And they do lots of different things. So these ribosomes help you make those. And then we have the Golgi apparatus, which is up here. And also, where's the one that's actually, yeah, right here. I guess I accidentally erased that. It's right here. This. So the Golgi apparatus also edits the proteins, but it adds other things. It adds things like sugars and fats to it to make it something else. And then we have something called lysosomes, which are the little yellow guys here, and a couple of yellow guys over here. The lysosomes are the trash compactors, or it's the trash mound. So any excess, anything in your body that it doesn't use, or any toxins maybe that you've ingested, or toxins that are a byproduct of a breakdown of something that you've ingested, is going to be broken down in the lysosomes. Then you have mitochondria. It's this dude right here. He's a power plant. He's the one who creates energy for you to run your whole cell, which is pretty awesome that you have, each of your cells has their own power plant. That, hey, we need more energy to create more proteins. And it says, all right, here we go. Start turning out. Then we have the cytosol, which is this kind of matrix that it's all sitting in. And then you have the cellular membrane right here, which in my opinion is one of the most spectacular, most complex aspects of human biology, is the cellular membrane. Because basically what the cellular membrane does is it creates a distinct environment between the outside of the cell and the inside of the cell. It's similar to your skin, but I would say even more complex than skin is the cellular membrane. Because the cellular membrane basically, not only does it keep that cellular matrix in, so the water in, but it also heavily regulates ions. So the positive and negative charges as it go in and out of your cells is heavily regulated, and even just a slight disturbance will mess everything up. And on that cellular membrane is something called a cell receptor, which is also, and you have thousands, hundreds of thousands of cellular receptors on every single one of your cells right now. And that is this, those cellular receptors, my bad, those cellular receptors tell the cell what's going on outside. It tells the outside of the cell what's going on inside. And it allows the cell to communicate and change with each other. So a cell inside your brain can pump out a hormone that goes to your thyroid, that pumps out another hormone that goes to every single cell in your body. Or another cell inside your brain can go to the adrenal gland that sends information everywhere else. And it's pretty amazing that through these cellular receptors, your body is able to communicate with each other. In fact, the one liver cell has about 30,000 cellular receptors just for the molecule insulin. 30,000 just for one molecule. And when they bind to the insulin, the information goes into the cell, and it sends out more receptors that grab onto glucose and bring glucose into the cell. And we're going to talk about that right now. So I would like a volunteer who's non-diabetic. Julia, come on up here.
Uh-oh. Krispy Kreme. Uh-oh.
All right, so I have here something that I'd like you to eat. It is a donut.
Is she allowed?
Yeah. All right, go ahead. I want you to show everybody. Turn around. I want you to show everybody how you let's you eat. How is that? Yeah? Yummy? I think she's a little, you can go sit down now. Thank you. Krispy Kreme donuts. I don't even know how much sugar is in them. I've tried to find out. There's like differences of opinion. But let's just suffice to say there's a lot, right? So what happens? What is the process that goes on when your body takes that information from that much sugar that you're pumping into your system? You're welcome, Casey. That much sugar, and it takes it and uses it. Well, I'm glad you asked. So, we'll do a quick run through of what actually happens to sugar in the body, because I think it's actually fascinating. So, as you actually, before you even eat, before Julia actually put that in her mouth, her body started creating something called amylase, which is an enzyme inside your saliva that helps start breaking down the starches, starts breaking down the sugars. And then she swallows it, comes down the esophagus here, and ends up inside of her stomach. Now inside of her stomach, there's more enzymes in there that are breaking down the sugars even more and creating and making it more digestible forms. And then what happens is the sugar then goes from the stomach into the duodenum, or the small intestine. And inside the small intestines, it's absorbed. The glucose, the sucrose, and all the other small sugars that have been broken down from the stomach and the saliva and all those enzymes are then absorbed in the small intestine. And it's amazing, and it's amazing the way the body works, because the blood that's picked up as it's absorbed into the blood system here goes directly to this organ here, which is called the pancreas. And the pancreas is the organ that secretes insulin. And this is and so the insulin, so there's sugar receptors here on the pancreas. Remember the cellular receptors, they're sitting there sampling all the blood that goes by. And there's sugar receptors, and now all of a sudden you eat a Krispy Kreme donut and you get a flood of sugar right there that's in the bloodstream right there. It's like whoosh, and your pancreas is like, whoa, that's way too much sugar inside this blood, because if you have too much sugar in your bloodstream, what happens? Your arteries crystallize, atherosclerosis, heart attack, death, stroke, all the bad things that the doctors tell you about. So the pancreas says, whoa, that's way too much. We need to start getting that out of the bloodstream into cells so it can be used. So you know what it does? It starts secreting insulin. And so as the more sugar comes in and it senses, the sensors sense the sugar, it sends out insulin, it sends out insulin, it sends out insulin, and it says, all right, let's go, we need to get insulin. And so insulin goes and works mainly on skeletal muscles and on liver cells. That's why the liver cells have so many insulin receptors. And inside the liver and inside skeletal muscles, those are the muscles that mainly use sugar. And so when insulin attaches on to the insulin receptors, it sends out more receptors to bring in sugar inside of those cells, and it turns on those cells' ability to take that sugar and convert it. And in the liver, if you have so much excess, the liver starts converting it to fat. And in the skeletal muscles, if they need it, they start using it, and that gives you the ability to move. It seems simple, but it's a very delicate system, because as you all know, too much sugar in the bloodstream causes tue much insulin. But the problem is that the body, so if that happens for years and years and years, your body says, you know what? We don't need, why are we always having this much insulin? You're always eating so much sugar, you're always eating this much insulin. Maybe something's wrong. So you know what? We're not going to listen to insulin anymore. And it's the boy who crawled Wolf. And so too much insulin, the body says, all right, we're not going to listen to it anymore, and that's what causes diabetes. So, another really complex system is the eye. Now, I forgot, I grabbed my mom's glasses. For those of you who don't know, my mom has the worst vision on the face of the planet, almost. She wears these glasses, I don't know if you know, that are probably so thick, they're about as thick as they are round. And they're really round, so that's saying something. And I can't believe I forgot them. But if I had them, I wish you could see just how thick these are. And it's because the eye is an unbelievable machine. And the fact that everybody in this room can see to a certain extent is an unbelievable feat of nature, or really, in my opinion, a really unbelievable feat of the Lord in our lives, because it is an incredible system. So what happens is light enters inside the eye through the pupil and hits this thing called the lens. And the lens bends the light depending on how far or how close it is to focus the image right here on the retina. And then the retina, which is the back of the eye, the back of the eyeball, takes that information and sends the information to the brain through the optic nerve. So basically, what has happened is you have light, which is electromagnetic energy, converted to then, as it hits these cellular receptors, converted to chemical energy, and then that chemical energy sends information all the way to the brain. In the back of the brain is where the eyes meet, is where your brain processes that information called the occipital area. And it's pretty amazing. It's a pretty incredible feat that the eye does this. Now, why does my mom have to wear glasses? Because this thing called the lens bends light wrong. But we found that all we need to do is put a little piece of glass here that bends light a little bit, and it'll completely change the information going in, which allows my mom to see perfectly normal with contact lenses, which is pretty amazing. So the other thing that amazes me about the eye is, did you know that when your eye receives that information in the back of the retina here, it's actually an upside down image. And scientists have found that if you can put someone glasses with lenses on them that turn everything that you see upside down, and it gives people a really hard time, and they're really, they see everything upside down for the first day or two, but after a day or two, your brain actually writes everything, and they see perfectly normal. And then they take the glasses off, and then they have to live for 2 days and see upside down again. But it's amazing that the brain is able to process this image and say, you know what, that's wrong, we're going to fix this, and we're able to see right side up. And don't even get me started on the brain. Everybody stand up for me. All right, go ahead and sit down. I saw a couple people sleeping.
That's good.
No, so the incredible amount of information that had to go from your brain to your legs to stand up is mind-blowing. Have you ever stopped and thought about the fact that when you stand up, maybe I'm weird. When you stand up, you have to come up with a thought somehow in your brain that sends a signal all the way down your spinal cord to your legs that causes your quadriceps to contract and your hamstrings to relax. It causes you to tighten up in your core, in your back, in your abs. It causes you to do that. But not only that, you also have information coming from your feet, from your hands, and from your ears telling your body where you are. Because what if you were, falling over? You're able to balance perfectly. And those are all different competing signals from completely different cells in your body that goes to your brain, and your brain is able to assimilate the information and make it so that you can stand up. And you do this how many times a day? It's pretty amazing, right? Don't even get me started on something called the autonomic nervous system, which I think is mind-blowing. But your body actually runs itself without you even thinking about it. Have any of you at all during this time thought about making your heart beat? No? Is that important for life?
Hello.
A little bit, right? So wow, you're not even thinking about that. Anybody thought, Julia, were you thinking about digesting that? No. So you have this whole system called the autonomic system that runs your body, runs the things that you don't even think about. So your brain isn't even your brain is running it, but you're not even thinking about running it. So there's all these things that you do. Anybody thinking about breathing? Haha, you can think about breathing. That's something that you can influence, but most of the time you don't, and so your autonomic nervous system takes over that. Anybody think about blinking? Same thing. You can influence it. You can blink when you want, but when you don't think about it, your body just does it naturally. It's because your autonomic nervous system takes takes care of all these processes without you. Isn't it amazing? When it says in Psalms, it says, "For you formed my inmost parts, and you knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, and the days that were formed for me, when as yet there were none of them." God knit us together in our mother's womb. He put together all those processes, the eyes, the brain, the autonomic nervous system. It's pretty amazing. Did you know that you have more bacteria living in and on your body than you do your own cells? You have about 37 trillion cells in your human body that are you, and there's about 100 trillion bacteria living in and on your body. And those also influence who you are and how your body reacts to certain things. 37 trillion cells, and they're all communicating with each other. They all have those cellular receptors, and they're all working together. It's pretty amazing. So, like I said, I didn't really want to focus on evolution, but I think that it's important to just touch on a couple aspects of this while we're going through here. So let me just walk you through the timeline of what the prevailing thoughts, because I think it's important. If we're going to talk about one side, I think it's important to talk about the other. So I want to walk you through what they say, what scientists say is a timeline of evolution and how we've gotten to where we are. So we're not going to talk about the beginning because there's a lot of controversy, and I don't think that you'll ever find a scientist who say, "Oh, Big Bang," there's controversy on that. But we're going to start with the beginning of life, which they say happened about 3.8 billion years ago, starting with the first cell. So 3.8 billion years ago, there's this big pool of hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon mainly. And it's lightning happening all around, and lightning happening. And what happens? The first cellular membrane is formed. That's what they say. So the first cellular membrane, which is complex, let me show you. This is the aspects of the cellular membrane. It's the hydrophilic layer. So it's a bunch of, it's what we call a hydrocarbon tail with a lipid head. So basically, let me make it simple. There's a bunch of light things that strand off this way and a heavy thing on top. And those things come together to form a sphere. And so they say about 3.8 billion years ago was the first cell. Primordial soup, lightning, all this stuff. And then there was bunches of them. And lightning started forming all these little membranes. All these little membranes are empty, nothing inside of them. And then suddenly some of them caught onto this RNA, which is like DNA. And so this RNA is then trapped inside of these cells. And then after time, about 300 million years later, these actually start developing into something that can do things. So the first simple cell, they say, happened around that. And so the first simple cell happens. It's now starting to divide a little bit. It has some information inside that it's able to multiply and create more of itself. And then about 1 billion years later, we get the first, so this is the first simple cell. So this is, very simple. It has information, so DNA, RNA. It has ribosomes, has a cell wall, and a capsule, and all these other things on it. So very simple, right? And so about 1 billion years after that, the first eukaryotic cell came in. And that's the simple cell that I showed you before. So it takes about 1 billion years to get from this into the complex machinery that I've showed you. And then, so there's a difference. You see here, this very simple nucleoid, there's a capsule, and then this one actually has functional aspects. And then, they say, about 580 million years ago, we had the first jellyfish. So that's going to be in here somewhere. And then since then, we've grown along. then there were tadpoles, and then the tadpoles grew vertebrates, and then there was fish, and then amphibians, and then birds, and then dinosaurs, and mammals, and then finally man appeared on the scene about 6 million years ago. The problem that I have with this is it doesn't follow logic. The complexity in going from here to here, even trillions of years can't do that. Because if you don't remember the information that the eye sends to the brain and it takes back, blind babies, if a baby is born blind and it's not corrected early enough, that part that it receives the information from the brain doesn't develop. So, in the same way, these processes don't form together unless there's a need. So we're not going to form, so a fish isn't going to start forming a lung cell. It may form one lung cell, but it's definitely not going to form a full lung before it actually needs to breathe out of water. A simple cell isn't going to start growing a part of the brain to sense information without an eye that's there, or vice versa. In fact, it completely goes against the second law of all the different, and then you talk about all the different aspects of our body. It's difficult to understand. So, like I said, it completely goes against the laws of thermodynamics. This is the second law, which is that the total entropy of an isolated system can only increase over time. Basically, entropy is, in a nutshell, it's not exactly, but in a nutshell, it's easiest to say that entropy is disorder. So therefore, disorder is only increasing. If you guys remember this scene from The Lord of the Rings, this would be impossible in today's, right? Why? What happens to smoke when you puff it out? It diffuses, right? It doesn't all stay together, right? Right? Why? It's because of entropy. It's because of this theory. It's because because the way that the system, the way that the universe works, the second law of thermodynamics states that the way that the universe works is that things go from order to disorder, not the other way around, unless a lot of energy is put into it. Think about it like this. Inside this room, it's what? Is it hotter or colder than outside?
Cooler.
Why? Air conditioning. I have a question. If you turn off the air conditioning, would the in here stay cool? Have any of you had the AC accidentally shut off at your house? How long does it take you to call that AC man? And real quick, right? It's because of the second law of thermodynamics that unless you have something continually pumping energy into that system that completely is cooling it, that's always cooling it down, the air in here will be outside. And it's the same in nature, that things will not go into a more organized place naturally. That's not the natural way of things going. The natural way is to go from here to here. So how is evolution proven? There's 4 main reasons. It's proven through the fossil record, proven through chemical and anatomical similarities related to life forms. It's proven through the geographic distribution of related species, and then also proven through the recorded genetic changes in living organisms over many generations. So I'd like to just discuss the 4 main reasons why scientists say evolution is proven. Like I said, it's not my job here to completely go through and disprove it, but I'd like to poke a couple holes. So first of all, the fossil record. They say that fossils are found to be millions of years old. Do you know how they found that out? Through carbon dating. And you know what they carbon dated? The rocks around the fossils. But you know how they decided that the carbon dating was right? Because the fossils that are in there were supposed to be from that time period. So it follows a circular reasoning that they found this fossil, it's inside this dirt. So they say, okay, how old is this dirt? And then they say, oh, the dirt says it's 380 million years old. That's right. So that means that the fossil must be 380 million years old. And so that's the process that they've come with the fossil record. Chemical and anatomical similarities. Basically, they say everything has DNA, there's a lot of similar skeletons, there's a lot of chromosomal similarities. People say, oh, did you know that chimpanzees are 97% the same genetic makeup as human beings? And I say, okay, that's one way to look at it. Or you can say, hey, did you know that the Ford Escape came from the Ford Explorer? No, what's the logic? No, the same people made these cars, right? It's not that they came from one another. It's that the same company, the Ford company, made cars that look similar. They all have engines, they all have steering wheels, they all probably have the blinker on the same side of the car, they all probably have the window wiper thing on the same side of the car, they all probably have a similar stereo system, and it's because they're made by the same people. So another thing that they say is the geographical similarities of specific species that are in areas. And so they say, just so you know, these are 3 different rainforests. This is Africa, this is the Amazon, and this is India. They look pretty similar, right? They all have trees, there's water, there's a lot of life. They say, well, there's only this type of plant in Africa, there's only this type of plant in India, and so they say that's the reason why. In my opinion, it's one of the most incredible things that we have forests on 3 completely separate continents. How did that happen? How did, and there's a lot of theories, and science hasn't proven anything, which is why I'm not saying what they say. Nobody's proven anything, but there's a lot of theories of how but in my opinion, it really proves that there was a creator who created it all. And then finally, one of the arguments is recorded changes in genetic species over time. And one of the original articles stating this was Darwin, which honestly most people say is not the greatest proof of evolution, but I'd like to utilize it for an illustration. Darwin went to the Galapagos Islands, and inside the Galapagos Islands it's a closed system, so it's too far from the mainland for any other species to get in. And so therefore, what was there stayed there. And so he surmised that only a couple finches must have come over to the Galapagos Islands, and that all these species are probably from those couple different finches. Which I would say is true. It's probably true, let's be real. I'm not disagreeing with Darwin. I actually don't disagree with anything that Darwin found on this trip. So what he found is that depending on what type of food the finches went to go get is what made their beak. And so you have, if they needed to crush anything, they had a big strong beak. If they needed to go probe eat for anything, they had a long narrow beak. And if they were fruit eaters, they had a specific beak that was good for peeling the fruit. And so that's what he found, is that there were a bunch of different beaks on these finches, and he says, wow, they're changing. One thing I would have to say about that as proof of evolution is, what are they changing from? They're changing from finches to finches. I don't see a finch changing into a dinosaur, or a finch changing into a lizard. I just don't see it. It's not there. And so the genetic changes that we've seen have been a lot of times adaptation. You know, why are there more dark people in a sunny climate? Because melanin helps protect you from the sun. Why? We don't need to get into it. So in my opinion, it takes a lot of faith. Excuse me. It takes a lot of faith to believe in evolution because of all of this. And yet that's the reason why they say we can't believe in the Bible. It's because we're believing it on faith. If you'll turn to me, let's read Genesis 1. So you know I'm not making this up. So now I'm going to, what does the Bible actually say about creation and how the world came to be what it is? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. And God called the light day and the darkness night, and there were evening and there was morning the first day. Then God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse and separated waters that were from the expanse, the waters that were under from the expanse of the waters that were over. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. And there was evening and there was morning the second day. Then God said, verse 9, let the waters under the heavens be gathered into one place, and let dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and he called the waters that were gathered together seas, and God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plant yielding seeds, and fruit trees bearing fruit with their seed, each according to its kind on the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation, plant yielding seed according to their kinds, and tree bearing fruits in its seed according to its kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the third day. Then God said, let there lights in the expanse of the heavens, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let there be signs for seasons and for days and years, and let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made the two great lights to rule the day, two great lights, the greater to rule the day, and the lesser to rule the night, and the stars. And I love it, and he said, and the stars. And God set them in the expanse in the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the fourth day. Then God said, let the waters swarm with the livings of creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the heavens. So God created the great sea creatures, and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful, and fill the waters and the seas, and let the earth multiply the earth. And there was evening and there was morning the fifth day. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to its kinds, and livestock, and creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kinds. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps on the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over living things that move on the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every yielding plant, every yielding seed, every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree with seed that bears fruit, and you shall give them, and you shall have them for food. And every beast of the earth, and every bird from the heavens, everything that creeps on the earth, and everything that has the breath of life, I have given them green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw everything that he made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. Isn't that amazing? That God spoke, and it happened. You know why? Because what God says is true. And so if he says it, it has to happen because it's true. What I also think is funny, and I think it's probably just because I come from the scientific mindset, but God didn't say, let there be cells, and then let there be, processes that link them together. He just said, let there be birds. He didn't say, let there be electromagnetic fields and gravity. No, he just said, let there be light. And it was. Now, I have a lot of friends that come to me that I've discussed things like this. And they say, so you're going to believe in some being that created the world that's like somehow larger than life, that like is able to do everything, he knows everything, he sees everything, he's come from the beginning, and he's always says, he's like, you believe that there's some being that, he doesn't really prove himself now, but he's out there somewhere, and so he said, let there be, and only created everything that we see in 6 days. And they're like, you can't prove that. Which is true. And then I have people, I've heard a lot of people say, well, you can't believe the Bible because the Bible is written by men and men have their own agenda. And so therefore, men wrote the Bible and men want it, and it's passed through been passed through generations of men, and so therefore it's false. And it's outdated, and it's wrong. That's an opinion. It definitely is. But when I look at this, even just the human body, my question is, how can you not believe in God? How can you not look at the complexity of the eye, the brain, almost every single system inside the human body and say, oh cool, that developed by itself? Just doing a quick recap. So there's atoms, chemical bonds, and DNA, and that just came together randomly. So there's protein, cellular receptors, and there's organelles, there's mitochondria, there's ribosomes, and that just happened because your body sees sugar inside the bloodstream and is able to deal with it properly in the different cells just because it formed that way. The eye senses light, hits the retina, and it just happens. So you can look at this masterpiece and say, that just happened. We're going to the Bahamas in a couple weeks, and my brother Tim's an artist. I can imagine how funny it would be if somebody found his easel with one of his paintings that he's working on in the middle of the sand in the Bahamas Islands. And maybe he went on a bathroom break or something, and came and found the easel and said, wow, I can't believe the ocean created that.
Thank you.
Why? Why is that stupid? Because it doesn't make sense. If there's something created, it has to be created from someone. It just doesn't follow logic. So many people say, how you can believe in a God? And my question is, how could you not? In fact, so many people say, don't you know that science has disproven God? And in my opinion, I really and truly believe that science has just proven how awesome God is. The more we find in science, that's how we say, wow, God did that. And he didn't have to list out the different things. He said, let there be. And it was. You know, that's not just my opinion, it's Paul's as well. In Romans chapter 1, we actually read it today in Sunday school. He says, for his invisible attributes, talking about God, namely his eternal power and divine nature, so those two things have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. For they, talking about us, are without excuse. For although they knew God and they did not honor him or give thanks to him, they became futile in their thinking and their foolish hearts were darkened. They claimed to be wise, but then they became fools. And they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Paul said that this would happen. And he said, creation speaks wonderfully of how awesome God is.
Amen.
This is the Milky Way galaxy, and I'm not going to get into astronomy at all. But there's 100 to 400 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy. Billion!
They all got names.
And they all have names!
By God.
And, okay, so there's 100 to 400 billion stars in our galaxy, and it's actually a medium-sized galaxy. Because in the universe, there's 100 billion galaxies. And you know what God said? And the stars. That's what the Bible says. The Bible says the sun, the moon, and the stars. It's like a side thing. Billions! Billions! What amazing God we serve.
Amen.
And yet, you know, so often we allow the issues and things in our life, the financial hardships, the health problems, the family issues, to look so big, to seem like they just take over everything. But this is the God we serve, who said, let there be, and it was.
Amen.
How come we just think of our things, and we look at it and we say, there's no way I can overcome this. There's no way we can deal with this. There's no way I can handle this. God spoke, and it happened. Imagine what would happen if you really allowed God to speak into your life. The change, the amazing miracles that he doesn't have to say, he just speaks and it is. You know, we worry about so many things. Jesus talked about it in Luke 12. He said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, nor about your body, what you will put on, what you will eat, nor what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the birds of the air, for they neither sow nor reap, they have neither storehouse nor barn, and yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than this bird? And which of you, being anxious, can add a single hour to his lifespan? If you are not able to do as much as this, then why are you anxious about the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow, but they don't work. I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these. But if God so clothes the lilies, if God so clothes the grass, which is alive in the field today and dies tomorrow and is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? Do not seek what you are to eat or what you are to drink, nor be worried. For all the nations in the world seek after these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Instead, seek first his kingdom, and all of these things will be added to you. That's God. That's the God who put into motion your body's ability to process sugar, who put into motion your eye and its ability. And yet, I allow the daily aspects of my life, where am I going to live? How am I going to make a living? What am I going to do with my life? Who am I going to get in a relationship with? What is it that I'm going to be doing tomorrow? I can't pay my rent. And all these things seem huge. They're massive in our minds. But God is so much bigger. Amen. And if you allow him to speak into your life, it's amazing what he can do. So today, Dad, you want to come on up? I invite you to come forward if you have something that you've allowed to be bigger than the Lord in your life. If you have something that you just obsess about, that has become larger than God, and you say, you know what, I want to lay this down. I want to put this at the feet of Jesus. God, I really don't trust you, but I want to speak into my life and allow him to do that. Speak into your life. God, if you were able to create this world, if you were able to create the processes, if you were able to help me to digest a Krispy Kreme donut, you can do so much more in my life. So I just invite you as we sing this last song to come forward. The deacons will pray. We'll be here to pray with you. I have so many things that I struggle with myself, worries and frustrations and doubts. But I need to remind myself that God is awesome. And he's huge. So I invite you to come.